Good morning, everybody. How you doing? Hello, and thank you for joining us for the opening session of Shift 2021. You're here today because you want to shift, you want to pivot, you want to do all the things, all the buzzwords. You're looking for a new path in your career. And I've got someone special today who can absolutely help you think about this, frame it, do it in whatever way you want to do it. But you've got a guide now in Julie Lythcott-Haims. Julie, how you doing today?
Laurie, it's a little early here in California, but I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me, and thanks to everyone who's watching.
Oh, I'm so pleased to have you. So, Julie, I'm just going to not even do justice to your bio because I don't want to spend an hour talking about how fabulous you are, but you are a New York Times bestselling author and the anti-helicopter parenting guru out there. You've written a manifesto, How to Raise an Adult, and you gave a TED Talk that has more than 5 million views. And you've got a new book out called Your Turn, How to Be an Adult. I don't want to summarize that book. You tell me, what is that book all about?
That book is a response to millennials who have said for years, I don't want to adult. I can't adult. Adulting is scary. This is me with compassion for them, not critique, saying, okay, something has happened societally such that you feel inadequate at the task of simply being yourself after childhood. I want to listen to that. I want you to know I care. I'm rooting for you to become you. And this book is my attempt to sort of be a dean as I was. I was a dean at Stanford for many years. It's me trying to be a compassionate, thoughtful, older person on the pages of this book who is helping people become who they want to become.
I love that. And before we kind of get started with the formal portion of this, we're going to do a little bit of a fireside chat, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. So if you have questions for Julie, please enter them in the chat. But Julie, you bring a really refreshing perspective about, inclusion and identity in this book. I mean, you've really made it important to let people know that identity matters. And so can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm a Black biracial person. I have other identities that matter to me, and I am 53 years old. So I have lived a life having been marginalized, relegated to the margins of life, unseen in literature, unseen in movies and television, and so on. And we are shifting in those ways, importantly, in our country lately. And I'm trying to contribute to that in the writing of a nonfiction book, a self-help book about a phase of life all humans go through. If they survive childhood, you are by definition an adult. And I wanted to be sure that every single reader across the racial and ethnic spectrums, across the socioeconomic spectrum, across the gender spectrum, sexual orientation, neurodivergence, neuroatypicality, mental health challenges, the degree to which a person is educated or not. I wanted every reader to feel, hey, she had me in mind, or my type of family in mind, or my type of situation, or my circumstance, or my way of being, or my way of believing. She had me in mind when she wrote this book. So I do that both with my own narrative, that is how I write the book, but then I included the stories of 31 folks who form this rich, diverse tapestry of the human community in my pages. I've put their stories in there because my own advice is not the only advice I want readers to have. My point is, there isn't just one way to be an adult. There isn't just one way to think about things. I've tried to put together this panoply of stories so readers can take a little bit from this one and take a little bit from this one and be reassured by this one and inspired by this one.
It's really beautiful, and I really appreciate that perspective, and thank you for sharing that. I think one of the things I want to start with today is, although you're an expert on, adulting, right? One of the things that's been so evident to me is that adults are struggling with adulting in their 20s, their 30s, their 40s. And you ask something really important in your book. You ask, which will you be? The person who knows who you are meant to be and goes for what you want, regardless of what others think? Or the person who wakes up at 40 or 50 realizing that all of your choices have been made from a place of fear and disappointing others? Boy, that resonated with me at certain parts of my life. And so I suspect it'll resonate with some of the adults, and I'm using air quotes, out in the audience today. So I'm just wondering if we can start with the basics. What is adulting, and why is it so damn hard for adults to do?
My definition of adulting is it's bookended by childhood and death. Whoops, my video's reversed. It's bookended by childhood and death. Okay. Childhood is a period. I'm sorry. I shouldn't.
That's all good.
You get what I'm trying to do. There's a spectrum.
Yeah, totally.
childhood is a period of life where you start in someone's body, you are carried then on someone's body, you're carried on their hip, you're held by the hand. And at some point they can let go of your hand because you can more or less take care of yourself. And you become this adult person who is more or less responsible for yourself. At the end of life, unless it comes suddenly, you are once again typically in the care of those who are more hale and hearty than you. Okay, so adulting is this sweet set of years where you're more or less in charge of yourself. And why is it so damn hard? Well, because it's a little daunting to know when I wake up, I got to fend for myself, bills, belongings, body, take care of business, I call it, all of these B words, it's on you. And that's a little daunting. But the more you practice it, the more you know, yes, I can, I did it. And I've just procured my first apartment. And even though it's not fancy like my parents' house, or, this isn't right, or this is broken, I'm renting it with the money I earned. I'm dealing with the landlord. I'm buying the food. I'm decorating it the way I want. And we experience delicious satisfaction when we're actually in charge of our own selves. It's also challenging because socioeconomically, Laurie, things have changed. The young, Gen Zs and millennials have more student loan debt than any prior generation, and wages and salaries have not kept up with cost of living. And so it for many infeasible to just go out and live on your own the way older generations did in their 20s. And there's this sense of the right track. There's the sense of I'm supposed to be doing this. I need to be doing this. And that is this daunting sort of thing that makes adulting terrifying. But here's what I want to say. It gets easier when we realize, and now I'm going to quote you, no, I'm actually in charge of myself, and I can be a self-leader, individually accountable for how I show up in the world. And I think that knowledge, that dawning existential philosophical thing we can grasp, I am a self-leader, I am the architect of my life. The longer we go at it, the more we get evidence like, oh yeah, and when I do behave that way, life really gets sweet and sings.
Well, I love that. Thank you so much for that definition. You talked about the rigor out there, right? This thing that we hold ourselves to, that we must do this and we must do that. And yet so many of us, even in this session today, have happenstance careers where we just fall into the job and maybe we're good at it and maybe we're not, but that's our current condition. And pivoting is tough, and maybe we don't even want to pivot, but we're looking back at our lives and we know we want something different. So you write a lot about self-compassion. So as we begin thinking about a career journey moving forward, how does self-compassion play into that?
Laurie, I'm a former college dean, and my job was to give a damn about my students, and I did. And so they would come to me with the oughts and shoulds. Oh, well, I'm going to major in econ, well, I have to, or, oh, I'm pre-med, And I would always say, why are you shrugging your shoulders? Well, I have to. And I was like, really? Do you have to? According to who? Well, and they started to explain all of the pressures and stresses, and which I knew were valid and real. But my job was to try to help this person emerge from under all that BS and become who they wanted to become. Look, I had a happenstance career, and let's not pretend happenstance careers are easy. I mean, often they come after tremendous work and education. I was a happenstance corporate lawyer, okay? And I was good at it, and people applauded me. And I was in a great firm with kind people who were mentoring me and giving me opportunity, and I was successful and making great money. And it wasn't where I wanted to be. And I had to find the courage to say, but wait a minute, what would you do if it was just up to you? What would you do if nobody else was judging you? Oftentimes, if you ask yourself that, your inner voice will just supply the answer. And then your task is to honor it, to say, oh yeah, yep, I always wanted to be a wilderness naturalist, but I come from a family of lawyers. I'm here to say, go be a wilderness naturalist. Okay. I'm also here to say, if you're from a family of theater artists and they're like, oh, you have to go into the theater. Oh, we're theater people. And you want nothing more than to be a Wall Street person, then you should do that. In other words, I'm agnostic. I'm not trying to, sort of shun the corporate world or whatever. I'm saying, no, you do you, and you actually know what it is you're good at and what it is you love. And you're looking for that sweet intersection. Because if you're just good at the work, but don't love it, you're going to feel like a drone in your own career, right? You're like, I'm going through the motions. I'm good at this. Yep. Another year at this. No. You got to also love it. And that Venn diagram intersection which I describe, I have a drawing of it in the book.
Yeah.
That's the sweet spot. That's when work is amazing. So I'm rooting for everybody to get to that place. And it requires that self-compassion, like caring about what you want and what you need, more than you care about societal, family, peer judgment.
Well, Julie, that's really well said. And I'm glad you brought up your book and the Venn diagram, because we're going to be raffling off copies of your books today. So everybody who's on today, you're automatically entered for a copy of the book. And we've got some chat happening. And if you have questions for Julie, we can get to them now. We can get to them at the end. But, there are so many people in here who are saying, yeah, happenstance careers are familiar to me. And also, I'm plagued by the right track, or I'm plagued by that idea of the right track. And I feel like I'm in drone mode right now. So, Julie, when you were in drone mode, how difficult was it for you to listen to that inner voice? Because you just talked about, you heard it, right? You asked yourself that question. How did you become courageous? I mean, is it just you do or you don't do, like the self-help gurus say?
So first of all, to the people putting that in the chat, this is excellent. I see you metaphorically. I wish I could actually be with you and see you. But the fact that you are summoning that truth to your consciousness, typing it out in a chat for people to see, that is sort of step one and step two. So yay to you. Okay. Often we don't allow ourselves to get there until we're miserable. Our bodies tell us, I'm miserable. My hair is falling out. My blood pressure is high. I have a knot in my stomach every Sunday afternoon at the thought of going back to that place. Okay. And often it's only in our misery that we give ourselves permission to pivot. And I'm here to say, yeah, the misery will probably finally impel you to make a change, compel you. But what if we could make that change slightly before the body is breaking down? Okay. Before we're depressed and just, right. And that's sort of what I'm trying to push you toward. And those of you who are already saying like, yeah, I'm stuck. Yeah, I'm this and that, right? Lean into that. Go meet with an executive coach. Go meet with a therapist. Have these conversations about what I really want, or what's working for me in this job is this, but what isn't is this. You have the right and the capability to engineer your own happiness at work. And so this inner voice is already speaking to you. What I want you to do is get better and better at listening to it and at being in quiet moments of reflection where you can really unpack it, do some journaling, write it down. Like I said, therapist, coach, someone else who can help elicit from you what you want of this life.
Julie, I know a lot of people hear what you're saying, and I see it in the chat. And the thing they say to me is that, but I need the money. I need to work in this job. And what I hear you saying is that you're not just going to decide, take this job and shove it. This is an individual journey, correct?
It's absolutely an individual journey. And there is no right track to the prior point. There is no one track that you're supposed to be on in life that will make you feel terrific. Or that you will suffer in life around if you're not on. Okay, life is this wide open landscape, and it's on you to lay your own path. Every single job is an opportunity for you to learn more about yourself, more about the working world, more about the environments in which you thrive, more about the bosses that you love working with, and the teammates and those environments that feel that they're not supportive of you or aren't, where you want to be. So everything is a data point, and it's sort of that continual reflection and giving yourself permission to make changes when you need to.
That's right. Well, one of the things I'm seeing in the chat is that, companies are breaking people down, and you just mentioned this as well. And so I wonder what's going on in the world, because many of us are working in these jobs that I think are, antithetical to who we are and what we believe in. Like they're just opposite of our core values. And you write so eloquently, Julie, about character and integrity. So what's the role of character and integrity? And how can we make sure that when we do this again, we don't make the same mistakes over and over again?
Well, we need to do our research about the company we're thinking of joining. And unlike when I was in my 20s and 30s, it is so much easier with the internet to figure out, what is this place like? What are employees saying? What have past employees said? One of my favorite resources, in other words, you're trying to figure out, regardless of what the work itself is or the job is or what your role would be, you're trying to figure out, will this be a good fit for me? And fit is about company culture and company values and how they align with who you are and your values. Can you be yourself there as a matter of identity? Do people like you, whatever that means for you, thrive there, right? Will you be valued? Will you have the opportunity? And so I strongly urge when you're doing searches, particularly if you're totally at sea and you're like, I am not happy here, I have no idea what I want, in sort of a brainstorming exercise, Google Great Places to Work. The Great Places to Work survey, year after year after year, is a fantastic resource on company culture. Read up on the companies that consistently are in the top 20 or the top 50. Read what employees are saying, see the kinds of jobs they're offering. I mean, going to work, I fundamentally believe if you are valued by your boss and so on, and colleagues and coworkers, it doesn't matter what the work is. I mean, obviously you want the work to matter, but the culture, you could be making anything, if it aligns with your values, like you could be doing almost any kind of work. If the people are amazing to work with and you feel cherished and valued and nurtured and supported and you're growing and learning, right? It could be anything. And so the company culture is something you can learn about. And I urge you to, because that's a way to ensure that your values are going to be, that who you are and the values you possess are going to be a good match for that workplace.
Well, I love that. And I love that you're talking about research, because one of the sponsors for today is Fairy Godboss. And I want to give them a little bit of a shout out, another great resource to do your homework. You, again, write about identity and write about being our authentic selves. And for years, organizations got really good at lying to us, telling us you can bring your full self to work. And I think some people can, but for others, it's a little bit riskier. It's a little bit more dangerous. So can you talk about that? And if I want to do this, how do I do this? How do I take baby steps to make sure that I'm aligning myself with purpose, vision, mission, values, but also being true to who I am and what I'm all about?
And let's face it, when you start, you are the junior person. And it is important to recognize that when you're first starting out in the workforce in life, you don't have all the cards, you don't have all the chips. There is something to the notion of it does get better over time. The older you get, the more agency you're going to have, the clearer you're going to be about, no, that's not what I want. This is what I want. No, I'm never doing that again. Right. Part of that comes with age and stage. And I just want to acknowledge that. But if you're in your mid 30s, I would say you are able to access that agency and be more of your authentic self and be less deferential to whatever the company culture is. I think more and more places are saying we value diversity. We want a diverse workplace. But the truth is, many companies don't even know yet what that means. They think we just need to bring people in the door and then we're going to treat you all the way we've treated everybody since 1950. And so they might bring you in the door and then you discover I can't really be myself here because people can't even use the right pronouns for me, or they're touching my hair, as happened to me in the workplace, with my biracial hair. And here's what you do when you're in that circumstance. You need to find mentors farther up the chain than you, who get you, who cherish you, who can take you to the side. You can go to them and say, hey, I need advice on how to navigate this place. I need someone to have my back. I think you might be able to be that person. Can I do more work for you? And I want to learn from you. Mentors are key to our progress in life. And particularly when we are in a situation where we're maybe in the minority for all kinds of reasons, finding that mentor who will help pull you through is really important.
I want to touch on this mentoring point because it's so incredibly important. A lot of people have written to me lately saying it's very difficult for them to access mentors in the age of COVID. Or, people are less available. Mentors are being tapped more than ever before. Mentors are human beings too, right? They're exhausting. So I've suggested this idea that you don't have to have a formal relationship with someone to learn from them, to grow from them. You can just copy them, steal their good stuff and move on. I wonder if you have any advice on that. Like, how do you get a mentor when everybody is so dang busy?
I'm going to go in the opposite direction. I'm going to say, approach the person and say, hi, I am in the process of self-development, career development. I admire you so much. I know you're incredibly busy. I wonder if you might have room to be my mentor. I propose that we would talk once a month for an hour And I will use that hour to ask you questions. There's nothing you need to do in advance or afterwards. It's just me having an opportunity to be very thoughtful about where I am, what I need, what my questions are, and to pick your brain. If you can't give me an hour, I will settle for half an hour. I just am so interested in being the type of person you are. And this is where you're buttering them up and you're showing a lot of respect.
Wow.
And that person is going to feel flattered, and they probably can make an hour a month. Or a half an hour a month. So I would say I'm in that relationship right now with somebody. She reached out to me. I said yes. And I look forward to these meetings. It's like, oh my gosh, this is that. I'm just going to sit and listen. She's asking me for advice. She listens to what I say. I mean, my kids don't listen, but my mentees listen. So
Right.
my point is, they might be, yes, they're busy, but when you can, you're praising them and saying, I value and I respect you. People like that.
Yeah, that's for sure. I love that. The other thing I want to talk a little bit about, because I saw it come up in the chat, is this idea of sponsorship. I know there's a difference between being mentored and being sponsored. Do you have an opinion on that? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know what a sponsor is outside of AA.
Yeah, well, I know that as well. And so a sponsor is someone in a corporation who actually takes an active role in your career and will work to carve out a path for you. They'll introduce you to opportunities. So it's less of a coaching model and more of someone who's actively involved in making things happen on your behalf. And there is a conversation happening right now that we need less mentorship and more sponsorship. Someone who is actually, opening those doors physically and figuratively for you and making those connections. So
yeah, I thank you for that. And I would say that is my old school definition, that when I think mentor, I think that, because I think once a person gets to know you and, really is a person in your corner, then because they're farther up the food chain than you, then they can take that more concerted interest and open the doors and make sure you're at the right meetings and speak up on your behalf and so on. So yes, I am conflating the two, but I very much agree that the sponsorship model is more action oriented.
yes.
We definitely do want those older, more experienced people to be taking an interest in bringing you along.
Love that. Thank you for that. So I do want to talk a little bit about adulting for adults, because one of the things we all find is that even when we're doing the work of our lives, it can be dull or frustrating or just downright stupid, right? We're dealing with politics at a dumb level. And it's like, what happened to this job that I love? Even the dream jobs can have these moments. So can we discuss expectation setting and professional maturity? I know this is something that is challenging for younger workers, but it can also be challenging for older workers as well.
I think the reframe is life is chaotic, life is uncertain. Hello, pandemic. Much is out of our control. And even in dream situations and dream scenarios, there's still scut work to do. There is still politics. There are still issues. I think the question is, what do we do in the face of that? And I think the best thing to do is call your team together, call your set of colleagues together and say, you know what, let's just acknowledge that things are really tough right now. Maybe let's do some brainstorming on why we do love this work outside of this. Let's remind ourselves of our why. Let's throw up popcorn, put on the whiteboard, like my why for this work, what brings me to work is this. This is what I believe in. This is what I value. This is what one of the brainstorms I like to do with my team is, okay, this shit we're dealing with right now is some shit, but when we get out of it, what will people say about us? Let's brainstorm what we want customers. In my case, it was students and families. What do we want them to be saying about us? And that was this aspirational pull toward, helping us get out of the muck and the mire to remind us of the outcomes we wanted. So those are just some ways, and those are great team building exercises, builds a sense of belonging to the place, and just helps you cope with the tough stuff.
Well, Julie, as we start to wrap up the conversation today, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about something that's really important, which is well-being and gratitude. Now, we only have a few minutes on this, but I think they're two sides of the same coin. And I think you believe they're also kind of related as well. So can you talk about well-being and gratitude in the job search and send us off thinking about what we should be thinking about those two concepts?
Yeah. Okay. So you're authoring your own life and your wellness, and whether mental, physical, emotional,
Right.
financial, all of that matters. And you're in charge of that. And you want to be continually noticing and doing an inventory on yourself on all of those things, and seeking to be stronger in the ways that matter to you. Gratitude is being grateful for what you have. They say that happiness is the measure of the distance between what you want and what you have. And so if what you want is out here and what you have is here, there's a great distance. You're not happy. But if what you want, if you develop a gratitude practice, then you become more grateful for what you already have. So it makes what you have feel like enough. This is a way to be in the present. It's a way to notice all the good things that are around you. Yes, you will still be aspirational. You have hopes and dreams and plans, but developing a gratitude practice makes today really worthwhile, makes today really positive and wonderful. And that's a huge emotional reframe that then strengthens us when we want to get out there to tomorrow and figure out what to do next.
I love it. Well, Julie, we only have a couple minutes left, and there are a million questions in the chat. So I want to invite everybody to connect with Julie on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You know, she's certainly active on all those locations. Get her book. We'll be raffling off copies of the book. Don't worry, you're automatically entered in the raffle. And Julie, any parting thoughts in the last 2 minutes and 20 seconds before we're all moved forward into the next session?
This is your one wild and precious life. I'm quoting the late poet Mary Oliver. It is your life. You are not a dog on a leash being held or walked down the path of life by anyone else. If you are, you need to get off leash. You need to unclip that collar from that leash. I mean, unless that's your thing, right? Like parents marching you down the path of life, extended family judging you for what you're doing. The time is up on that. It is time to say, I love y'all, but I'm going in this direction. And if they can't love you back, that's on them. My book is full of stories of people emerging into this clarity about, no, this is who I am. This is what I'm going to be. This is what I want. And sometimes they have reconciled with family, and sometimes family have come along, and sometimes they're estranged because family will not accept their choices around work or around identity. And I'm here saying, you do you. This is your life. I'm rooting for you to thrive.
Well, Julie, always inspirational. I know you inspire me, so I'm just grateful to spend 30 minutes with you. So thank you very much for today.
Thank you for having me, Laurie. Thanks to everyone for listening. Really appreciate it.
And everybody, up next is a conversation with Dima Gowie. She's going to talk about working and leading across time zones in diverse cultures and really building on Julie's message about being you, being authentic, but communicating and getting your work done in the most effective way possible. So stay tuned for Dima. And Julie, thanks again for today.
Thanks for having me, Laurie. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.